Well, thank you so much for taking out a time.
You're welcome.
I really wanted to interview you for a long time now. And I guess when you start saying that you are coming to Singapore, I was like, oh, yes, let's do this. Because I think when I first started traveling, you're my first host for Couchsurfing in Australia. I had I wouldn't know how to describe it because I don't think one word could describe the entire of my experience with you. I'm not sure about the other way around. It was just for me. It was my first big trip out to Australia, and it was full of excitement, full of the unknown. And I just knew that, okay, well, I'm gonna go to Melbourne, and then there will be an Asian brother gonna help me out. And there I go. And the first thing I remember coming over to Australia, Melbourne, was like, let's go dance. I was like, oh, this is how fun. And I just love it. Right, so I actually went out to do a little bit of digging on Couchsurfing and found our reference.
No kidding.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is more a reflection on me than it is to you. Let me just do a little bit of reading. Yes, so here goes. I would be wrong to categorize this human being with a list of adjectives because he is more than that. Rick lives his life surrounding in paradoxical belief, causing him to have multiple personality that's being squeezed into a human shell. What I'll say is that this human shell is a lot of resemblance to Jet Li. Not the Jet Li in the movie, but the Jet Li in real life, the one that get laid like a rock star. And whichever the case, he's a character that you wouldn't want to miss out in your life movie.
Well, thanks for a glowing report. That was very flattering, I have to say. Thank you, Bryan.
I was cringing as I reread this because it really just shows where I am in my life. But also, I'm really glad that sort of wide-eyed, innocent Bryan, just looking at life full of excitement, like I still am now. And I guess my question for you is that on the other end, what do you feel of me? Because that was almost 7 years ago, and I'm a very different person now.
Very good question. So, when you wrote me that request, you were the first ever Asian to have ever written me a request, especially from Southeast Asia. So I get literally at that time, easily on average between 50 to 80 requests a week, and I have to sift through all of them. And most of them are European travelers, a lot of Americans, Canadians as well. But primarily Europeans. And so when I got this message from this Asian brother from my parents' side of the world, that's like, dude, this guy's probably gonna be just like me, and I gotta say yes to him. And I do recall I am very selective about my request acceptance. So I do recall it was quite well written, and I thought, yep, he's coming to stay with me. So beyond that, I had no expectations. I just thought, look, he's probably a young fella. He's probably going to be a little bit innocent and naive and a bit wet behind the nose, you know. But beyond that, I just said, it's an open book. Let's see what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, and what were your parting thoughts of me after, I don't know, maybe was it 7 days? Because I stayed with you for 3 days, and then I live with another couchsurfer in the city for 3 days as well, right?
So I recall thinking, boy, this kid's so idealistic and so full of bullshit. When is he gonna wake up to himself? But you gotta understand, at the time, I just literally came back from war service, and I'm full of cynicism, and I was a little bit bitter about life, you know, but at the same time very hopeful. And then I saw you just full of life and full of beans, but at the same time so full of idealistic concepts that were not real world applicable. So I thought, this kid has got so much to learn. But you know what? I was really proud of you, because despite a lot of the differences in the conversation that we had, or at least differences in ideas, you were very receptive. And I thought, it doesn't matter where you go with your ideology, you're gonna be a great listener, and you still are to this day, and you're gonna be a fantastic human being, which you clearly are, because we're here right now, 7 years down the track.
No, and you know what you just said reminded me of our conversations that we had, and I was just and I think one of the moment I remember I was in the car with you, and I just thought to myself, this this guy asks really weird questions. Like his flow of conversation is just so weird. Like it's just not conversational at all. And I think reflecting back, you were probably asking way better questions that are not, are unusual for a normal conversation, but those are like tough questions.
I have to say, when you, it's very cliche when you work in an environment where you're consistently and constantly facing imminent danger. Your own mortality kind of keeps popping up a lot in your own narrative in your own head. So after a period of time, you kind of practice immediacy very, very well, you know. And this is actually a term that I've only recently just come to learn, but I've been practicing it forever. When you're constantly placed in imminent danger, you have a very good reason to practice immediacy because you don't know if you will wake up the next day to go to work and you come back with all your limbs intact, or worst case scenario, you don't come back at all. So, so the questions that I like to talk about and the things that I like to talk about are not your typical, hey, how you doing? What do you do for work? You know, I mean, I still want to know what you do for work because while it doesn't define you, it tells me where you're at in life, and we can kind of, it's a starting point for a lot of conversations. However, I like to kind of just dive deep, fast, because this conversation I'm having with you might last 5 minutes, or it might last 5 days, or it might last 5 years. And if the conversation flows well, this will last for 5 lifetimes for me.
And you're right, Rick. I think I also sort of right now hold that thought with conversations these days. I bet back then too, but just with more naive ideology, and now just all going through the world a little bit older and wiser and seeing a bit more things. And these days, I really like to dive deep and fast with conversations. You know, like my favorite questions these days are: what are the challenges you're currently facing with, and how can I help you out with that? Or what are you passionate about? And sometimes if people really can't answer those questions, I get disinterested with the conversation.
I totally get that actually. Funny you should mention that because I had this very same conversation with a very dear friend of mine, whom I've known for quite a number of years as well. And I brought it up to her because I felt that there was some angst in her life, and that angst was present the last time I saw her, which was a few years ago. And that angst, the very same angst was present last time, when I saw her a few days ago. So I begged the question, what is it that's holding you back? Simple answer is fear. But it's not for me to dig deeper than that if they're not willing to share that. Anyway, so it's just interesting that we're having this conversation.
No, I mean I like that you probe too, because I think a lot of people is just too shy to just there's something with you. I'm not gonna point it out, but I'm gonna ask a question to lead you there.
It's a really difficult question to ask because it's a really big trap, because if it's not received well, that person's going to distance himself from you, and you're going to be the douchebag conversationalist that they don't ever want to see again. So it's a risky thing, but once again, when it comes down to immediacy, I believe in gambling big, because the rewards are big as well. Because if the person that you're having this conversation with opens up to you, it can go in so many different areas, so many different angles. And it's not my place to help anyone or give anyone advice, because I'm not at all qualified to give anyone advice. However, if I can help you find your own answer within yourself, then, cha-ching, we've mission accomplished for that day.
And these days, I've always take the wrong angle, which is like, this is the way and or the highway. But now I really enjoy that, letting that person find their answer. Because if I were to tell you like my answer, you like maybe 90% of the time, I'm pretty sure that you would not like register. yeah, it's almost like you want to lead them to the place.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I mean, once again, it's one of those cliche catchphrase. The answer is within us. No one needs to give us the answer, you know. Um, but sometimes it helps when someone kind of give you the right probing question for you to delve deep within yourself to find that answer, to kind of challenge yourself to face some of those questions that you may not have the courage to ask yourself. So when you're walking down this path with somebody you trust in hand, you might be more willing to address some of those issues, and that's what it is that I try to, or that's what I was trying to achieve. Doesn't always work, however, but you know.
No, I do the same too. So this interview is going to be a conversational parkour. Lots of topic, and we'll be all jumping around the place. So maybe
I like it.
let's just start with, if someone would be on the street and would come up to you and ask you, what do you do? How would you answer that?
That's a really tough question. But in a nutshell, I would say that I'm a connector of people. My gift to the world is I connect people through various means. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "Hey, Brian, this is my friend, Brian number 2." Okay, or I might run a workshop and bring people together. I might throw a random picnic and say, "Hey, random strangers, come and attend," and magic always happens. You know, and this is a little catch. I love catchphrases, right? And this is one that I live by: build it and they will come. It started 7 years ago. I built an NGO with a friend. In fact, no, but he asked me if he should build one, and I jokingly threw it out there, and I believe it's from a movie. I don't recall what movie it came from, but it says, "Build it and they will come." And I said it to him, "Dude, man, just go build it and they'll come. If you build it, I'm gonna come and join you." And sure enough, he built it. And so I was like, shit, I'm in the poo now. So I guess I run an NGO now. So we dived into it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I create opportunities for people to connect with one another. And that is my gift to the world.
Yeah, and you yourself, like we mentioned before, a Malaysian Chinese-born Australian, and you're born in Australia, just to get it out of the way.
No, actually, I was born in KL. I was born in KL in '75, and I was 2 years old when my family left the country to go to Brunei to work. So Brunei being the Dubai of Asia, that's where all the young people go to work and make lots of money and kind of go back to whatever country they come from. But yeah, I think my family were fairly progressive thinking, and they decided very quickly that our education and our future might be better enhanced if we had an overseas education, meaning a Western education. So after their mum and dad made a little money, they went over to Australia, where we just loved the lifestyle there. And so we just stayed. And when you're young, you don't think about borders, you don't think about passports. You just know this is home. And so I bleed green and gold, and I am an Asian man living in Australia, and very proudly so. And life has been very, very good to me in Australia.
How old did you move over?
I believe I was 11 years old at the time. Yeah.
Okay. And growing up as an Asian in a predominantly white country, and Australia seems to also have a reputation too. Do you actually face any racism of sorts while growing up?
Funnily enough, not a lot. But to clarify that, when my family came to town, we were some of the first Asian people in town, and I was the first Asian boy to ever attend that high school. So when my uncle, he's Caucasian, he married my dad's sister. He's a very big man, and he's an outback farmer who sold his massive property, so he's got a little bit of money, right? So when we came to town, we were broke as hell. My dad borrowed a suit that belongs to my uncle. My mom bought this secondhand faux mink coat, and we were driving my uncle's really expensive big car. right up to the gate of the school, and mom and dad flanked me as we walked down the corridor to the principal's office to introduce me to the faculty. And so the entire school, full of white kids, kind of came out and looked at this Asian guy, and so the rumor went around school that the Yakuza was in town. So, being the son of a pretend gangster, and my dad kind of perpetuated that myth with a really close-shaved head, and my uncle also owned a number of pinball parlors, which again perpetuated that whole myth that we were gangsters. So for my entire high school years, I never got bullied. Never once I got bullied. There was a lot of kind of snide comments, a lot of passive-aggressive behaviors. I just couldn't understand why I never really got verbally abused when I saw other kids being abused. Completely confused.
So you saw others.
Oh, yeah, so all the other kids get bullied, but I never got bullied.
Wow.
And then on the day we graduated high school, my best friend came to me and said, "Hey, Rick, remember the day you walked into school and mom and dad's walking behind you?" I said, "Yeah. Wow, it turns out that everyone thought you guys were the gangsters from Japan. We're not even from Japan, right?" So we're like, I know. So that was a joke. Yeah.
Knew.
So finally, I kind of dawned me. I said, "Right, okay, now I know why I never got in." But in addition to that, I have to say, I was shocked when I first went to Melbourne shortly after that. Yeah. So I finished high school. I went to further my education in Melbourne, and that's when I encountered real racism, and it completely destroyed my faith in humanity. I was scared for my life. And back in the 80s, there were slogans spray painted on walls, and it was very overt. Chinks go home, and Asians were the target of the month at the time. So we get to take turns. My Arab brothers are having a go at the moment, so I'm out of the firing line. But as far as real racism targeted at me personally, I have to say very little, very, very little. And I put it down to one of two things. First of all, I've been really lucky, I think. And secondly, I believe that I've got a strong enough personality that when I walk the street, I dominate my space. And when you dominate your space, it is very unlikely that somebody with low self-esteem is going to pick on you based on your skin color. And when someone does throw one of these comments out there, a racial comment, for instance, it isn't always about racism. Sometimes it's just an ignorant comment that they don't even know is a racist comment until you kind of educate them on it. So I'm very cautious about calling people out on racism, quote unquote, unless you are overtly racist. I will not necessarily jump down your throat for it. However, if you are, God help you, because I will not.
Yeah, because I remember that going to Australia, people say it is like a racist country. Yes. I was there 6 weeks, no problem. I'm having a good time.
Exactly, and once again, it comes down to a personality. When you have a bright personality, you attract nothing but brightness. When you walk the street with a frown on your head, expecting to beef on, that's exactly what you'll find. So I guess a lot of it comes down to the type of person that you are. If you live in fear, as a lot of my Asian brothers do, that's exactly what they find. They will find people who will target them because their entire body language screams, pick on me.
Even to add on to that, I would also think that is sort of a narrative that they are telling themselves, like they are trying to look for racist thing that other. Well, if I were to go in to think that, the world is nice, the world is awesome, and the world generally would be awesome. Yeah, that's how interesting. Yeah, no, because it was really different comments when I asked people about the Australia experience versus mine. I was just like, wow, interesting, Okay, so moving along, you end up in the army. And I wouldn't think that Australia have a mandatory mandate that you need to go to the army. So what are the sequence of events that lead you to joining the force?
Well, some people are born to be a doctor, some people are born to be healers, some people are born to be teachers. I believe I was born to be a warrior. Just gonna let this plane go past.
A lot of planes today.
Yes, there's a lot of planes today. The Air Force are doing the exercise apparently.
Mm.
So from a very young age, my earliest memory I recall was when I've got a fantastic long-term memory. I've got memory all the way back to 2 years old, I believe. And I've got this very vivid memory of myself when I was 2.5 years old in KL.
Mm.
And I was in this shared house where my parent lived with a whole bunch of other people. And we had this black and white TV downstairs. And back in the old days, black and white is like, poor people TV. So we put this blue film over the screen so that you've got a bit of color, right? And that's how you get color TV back in the old days. So anyway, there was this scene. I didn't know this movie until many, many, many years later. And there was a war movie where a group of soldiers had fought very hard against another group of soldiers. And at the end of the battle, they climbed the top of a feature. And the 5 soldiers were pushing this flag up against the highest point of the feature. And that image kind of burnt itself into my psyche. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be that. I'm going to do that one day. I remember so clearly, I'm going to do that one day. And so that kind of planted the seed for what I was meant to, what I would do eventually, many, many years after that. So I toed the line. I did what an Asian son is expected to do. I'm the oldest son in the family. My dad would have expected me to be an engineer like him, and so I bucked the system a little bit. I became a geek. I studied applied science and information technology.
Oh wow!
And after my studies,
I knew.
Yeah, right. So I did. I finished my studies, and I said to my parents, I've completed my obligations to my family, but I now need to live my own life. And I decided to apply for officer training. And with the full support of my family, they were very supportive. They thought, all right, my son's going to be an officer. That's okay. No worries, we can do this. We can deal with this. And so I went through to the second round of interviews, and something dawned on me. I'm a brown-skinned soldier walking into a white man's army. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to generate respect if I don't even know what soldiering is? How are they going to understand what I need them to do if I don't know the hardship that they go through? So I very quickly, I got to the interview. I excused myself and I said, I'm withdrawing my application. And they asked me why, and I told them exactly why. So I said, yep, no worries. Chop, here you go. General enlistment. Goes to this officer the next day, and within 6 months, they've done all the checks required of me, and I was into boot camp, and thus began the journey of my soldiering life.
Oh wow! So you have the opportunity, because you did the uni, to be able to be an officer. At the last minute,
I pulled out to be a grunt.
Wow! It's not even like, well, I don't want to be in the army altogether, but it's like, no, I want to start from the lowest level.
The lowest denominator, yes. Sometimes I think, Rick, why the hell did you do that? That was so many years of agony and pain and unnecessary bullshit. But as it all turned out, I don't know if I would do things any differently, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's made me the man I am. However cynical I am these days, but it's made me who I am, and I feel that this is what I'm meant to have done. So I think it was a good decision.
And if I didn't get this wrong, is you left as a paratrooper?
Yes, that's right. I was always a paratrooper. So back in the old days, when I went through boot camp, right, I excelled at what I did because when I signed on a dotted line, I wasn't there because I had no other options. I was there because I literally bought the bullshit of, for Queen and country, for the flag, for the soil, for the ones who died before you, and for the brothers next to you. I really sucked it all in, and I still do, believe it or not. I still believe in it, true and true, balls to bones. But I'm now a little bit more cynical, and I believe that I'm a bit more wiser. But at the time, I decided when I when I was going to be a soldier and a grunt, that I would give my life to it. So when I signed on the dotted line, it was actually a very significant symbolic gesture of myself giving my entire life to my country. And in doing so, when you give yourself so fully, so wholeheartedly, there's nothing you cannot do in this world. You become an expert at everything. You become an expert at becoming an expert. So I excelled at my at boot camp, which isn't hard, by the way. It's people think boot camp is like, oh my God, It was literally the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. But up to that point, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I thought, oh my God, nothing will ever be harder than this. But little did I know, holy hell, it just got like a million times harder than that. So I excelled at boot camp, and I went. I chose to be infantry. I could have gone in any stream at the time. So I selected infantry, and I said, yeah, there you go. Because nobody wants infantry because you are like the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. And just so for people who are listening, how would you describe a paratrooper? Because I was on Wikipedia and it's like, yeah, basically a trooper that can do the parachute thing. I was like, all right.
There's not much more to it. I mean, like,
but this is also the highest one of the highest.
We are an elite unit. We are an elite unit. So we are a group of very special group of men with very dedicated sense of duty. But what differentiates us from other soldiers is our mode of transport. We just travel in style. That's all. That's how I like to look at it. When you talk about things like elite units, special forces, it's potato. It's all semantics. At the end of the day, we all do a job, and we all either excel at it or we die, or worse yet, our brothers die, and that's all there is to it. So as far as what a paratrooper is, it's basically the ground troops, the shock troops, who dominate a battle space from the sky. So you can have Marines who come from the ocean, and paratroopers. What my guys do, we dominate the airspace. So anything that to do with the sky, helo insertions, parachuting, halo jumps, hey-ho jumps, anything to do with parachute R&Ds, it falls under our domain.
And I'm going to ask a very stupid question here, which is, so in the US you have like Navy SEALs and they are like so and so, and what is the paratrooper of the Australian Army? Like where would you place them, or how?
My unit where I finished up is part of what we call a Special Forces Training Center, training wing. So we are pretty much in charge of the training, R&D, and everything associated with the Special Forces community operation and support of that operation. So when they go into operation, for instance, we go in with them to support them in their whatever it is they do. Oftentimes when we're not doing that, we're just like any other soldiers doing what other soldiers are doing, patrolling the battlefield, patrolling the cities that we have occupied, providing, and that's not all we do. We also do a lot of things like disaster relief. My first ever live operation was actually my first week into my unit. Walked in, I thought I was tough shit. I was a paratrooper. Walked in with my chest puffed out, oof, And little did I know, my first op was going to be cutting trees. It turned out to be the hottest year in the history of Australian.
And are we talking about cutting tree with an axe, or is it like electrical?
Anything. None of us were qualified in chainsaws, but they threw a chainsaw in our hands and said, go cut. Now go cut a fire trail. Because we had an area in New South Wales where the entire forest was just being devastated by this massive out of control fire. And they threw everything they had at it. And so they had reserve soldiers evacuating civilians. They had us cutting a massive fire trail between the fire and the next state forest. And so that was my first live op. I thought I'd be jumping in with guns blazing, wah, and popping out of the water with face painted, Nope, I was chopping trees down and raking a fire trail.
And I remember going with you to Anzac Day, yeah? And you were dressed in your parade uniform. And comparing to the rest of the other people, your uniform seems to be a lot heavier. with all the badges. So let's talk about some of these badges that you've acquired. What are some of the more interesting ones?
Well, we have a lot of embellishments on our coats or our jackets. Some of the things you would have seen on my coat would be my returned serviceman's coat badge, which tells, I guess, the rest of the world that I'm somebody who has served the country on operations and have returned alive. You would have seen thank you, an infantry combat badge, which is perhaps the biggest badge of honor that you can bestow upon an infantry troop. And this is only bestowed upon somebody who's been in combat. So that kind of differentiates you from somebody who's been on operations but never actually been in combat. So, there's a lot of times when you do go into a theater of conflict and you never hear a single shot fired. And that's perfectly fine, and this is exactly what we want. We don't go into someone's backyard picking a fight. However, sometimes that does happen, and as an infantryman and as a paratrooper, if you don't pitch your skills against an opponent that is likewise trained like you are, it's like training for a soccer match or the grand final that you never ever get to play, and you live your entire life thinking, was I ever good enough? Would I have survived combat? Would I have survived the stress of combat? Would I have frozen when the time counted? And these are the big questions a lot of people will thankfully never get to answer. And I think it's a fantastic thing that they don't ever have to answer that. But my troops and we've served in 3 different conflicts up till the point I left the service, and so those badges and those medals reflected the different campaigns that I've been involved in.
And I'd just like to underscore something that the US and Australia are allies.
Yes.
So, which means that, I think what you told me was that every war after the Vietnam War.
Correct. Exactly. So every war after the since the Vietnam War, even prior to that, the Korean War. We were embedded with the Americans and the Canadians. Vietnam War, we were embedded with the Americans again, and every war since then the American has been involved in. We've been up to our necks in the shit with them as well, so to speak.
In our conversation yesterday, you brought up about moving a 3-wheel lorry up a mountain. Yes. Tell me more about that.
Well, here's the thing, people think soldiering is all about blowing shit up and falling out of planes and very cool stuff, and it is. A lot of it is. The other part of it is they make you into amazing, creative inventors of things. Some of the most amazing things that come out of the battlefield were because of what we do. And so one of the things in relation to what you're talking about, we had a situation where we were bringing aid in a truck, and it was a pretty old truck, and the truck had lost its wheel. So my team and I had to move this fully laden truck with 3 wheels up a really steep incline, and it was a logistical nightmare. And we managed to get it up the hill. Let's put it in short.
Well, I want to know how you do it.
We had to cut down a number of trees. We were really good at lashing.
Which wheel is this?
It was let me think. It was quite a while ago. It was the rear left wheel.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had one guy in the cab pumping the brakes every time we needed him to kind of stop it from rolling back on us. And we rigged up this system where the entire team was basically carrying the weight and the load of the broken wheel with a lever, and because the drivetrain was still operational but damaged, we couldn't work the wheel, so we had to get half the team pushing this damn thing up the hill while the rest of us were supporting it. And so I was one of the support, and during that particular operation, I crushed my spine. And to which I'm still suffering from today. So I've got terrible back pain from that. And yeah, but it makes us wonderful, creative inventors of things.
Yes.
I'm gonna dive into something a bit like deeper and darker a little bit. This question. So, in the forces, I guess this question is more for like how maybe it's a two-part question. How do people cope with the loss of another dear soldier in the force, and how do you cope with it?
Good question. I'm going to take a moment to pause for a sec.
Yes. P.
This question always takes me places.
Yeah, we can come back to it. How about that?
It's fine. It's while it's kind of fresh in my mind, I like to just knock on the head, and I think this is something I'd like to share with the general public as well. Oh, the first time I witnessed a fatality was actually back in Australia. We were making preparations for deployment, and it was a brigade-size operation. And so, you know, part of what we do as paratroopers is we are really good at adapting our mode of operation. So yes, we dominate the sky and dominate the battlefield, but we also become experts at other modes of insertion. On this particular operation, we were working with heavy armor and armored transport vehicles. So we were basically inserting with what we call ASLAVs, which are six-wheeled armored vehicles. They are effectively a light armored tank that can go on pretty much any type of terrain, where the crew commander can sit outside of his hatch to have a good view of the battlefield when he's not on fire. His driver sits next to him under cover inside a covered enclosed capsule. On this particular convoy, we were returning from a particularly difficult exercise, and the driver had lost control of the ASLAV, and it rolled down an embankment. I was in the vehicle directly behind that disabled, that downed vehicle, so we were the first responders, and the vehicle had rolled on top of the crew commander, but he was just his chest was outside of the vehicle, up to his. This is probably a bit gruesome. I don't know if you can, if you may want to edit this, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway.
No, go for it.
He was completely lucid, and he said to us that he needed the phone. He needed to call his wife. It was fatal.
He got his last call.
He got his last call, and we told him that the second we lift the vehicle off his chest, he would die from blood poisoning, basically. The toxin would rush from his lower extremities straight to his heart and into his brains. And that's exactly what happened. So we waited for the longest time while we listened to this horrible, heartbreaking conversation. And some of us held his hands and waited for the
I can see it must be a really tough decision for everyone over there too, because it's more of a situation where you know that in any moment, if you lift it up, he's going to end his life. But yet, you know, you don't want to let him suffer in pain any longer.
It's the hardest decision to make the call. It's not my decision, obviously, to make. I was just a private at the time. The call came from the highest level, and when it came, we were there to see him go, and that was difficult. But at the time, we did what any soldiers did. We drank to his honor, we drank to his family, and we made a collection for his family, and it was full of bravado and loud cheering, and we toast to any battle gods that would listen to us, to hide and mask our own fear for our own mortality. That could have been any of us.
Did that work?
Yeah, it did, believe it or not. It did. To an extent. We masked it and we hid our true emotions. And that was how I learned to deal with subsequent loss of friends throughout the years.
Correct me and Rod if I'm wrong, and you don't drink now.
No, I don't. No. I drank like a fish when I first joined the army, but very shortly after that, I gave up, and I made a vow never to drink again. And to this day, I've never drank a drop. Yeah, so that's one way we dealt with it. Myself personally, I deal with it a little bit more pragmatically. So I have a very strong spiritual background. My family's a Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist. It clashed terribly with what I did for a living. And this was a struggle that I had fought for many, many years. And I would always return to my master, my Buddhist master, and I would ask him, have I made the wrong decision? Am I doing the wrong thing? To which he would always answer with the same response. Do it with the right intention in your heart, with no anger in your heart, and you will be fine. So I took that to heart, and whatever I've done from that day on to now, I do it with no malice in my heart. When I have to hurt somebody in the line of duty, I do it with absolutely no malice in my heart, with the exception of a few times when I lost my shit, I lost my cool. I have to say those were not my finest moments. But yes, I always try and keep those kind of little lessons in my heart.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect segue for how you were as force for almost 12 years, and what were the decisions or sequence of events that led you to leave the force?
Oh, wow. That was probably the simplest, but at the same time, the most difficult decisions of my life. Joining, I thought, was a hard decision because I was full of fear of the unknown. But leaving, I was full of fear of the known. I knew that I would be going back to the default world. I was going back to mediocrity. When I was in uniform, or when I was in the service rather, because we're not always in uniform. When I was in the service, I'm not ordinary Joe. I'm beyond that. I'm beyond Superman. It is amazing what you kind of, the narrative that goes through your mind when you have to put yourself in that position. We consider ourselves dangerous men. We consider ourselves special people, in a very special kind of environment among among like-minded people. And one of the difficult things for me was knowing that I'd be losing not just my payroll, but I'm losing my brotherhood. I'm losing my family.
Because the payroll is the least of your concerns.
That was the least of my concerns. I wasn't worried about money. I'd always known that I'd be okay financially, one way or another. I'd always be okay. But yeah, losing that chunk of my life, losing my family, that chosen family, that weird bunch of dickheads that I would never introduce to my family, type of family, it filled me with absolute terror. And to know that I'll no longer be special, no longer wear that badge that says that when we are in uniform, everyone knows who we are because of the color of our beret. We stand out. It is the international colors of paratroopers, and you know, it's very hard, I guess, for people to understand who hasn't walked the line, that a piece of material, the color of a piece of material, can give you so much identity. But it did. It gave me strength. It gave me the will to persevere through all manners of hardship, both emotional, physical. I have smashed through pain barriers I never thought possible, all because of a piece of material, the color of a piece of material. You know, because somebody told me that this piece of material will make you invincible when I put it on your head.
And why then the thought even first, you know, that you maybe want to leave?
I was coming to the end of my military career, and I was physically broken. I had suffered a great deal of injuries. We talked about the crushed spine with the truck. That was probably the least severe of the injuries.
Just the least?
Yes, yes.
Okay, wow.
I fell out of a plane once. That was quite severe. I had amnesia for a week. That's another funny story. That it was literally like an episode out of a movie. I woke up on the ground looking up at the sky thinking, where the hell am I? I'm wearing all these funny clothes that looks the same, the colors the ground. I've got this rifle sitting next to me. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it was a rifle, but I knew I had to do all these things with it. Okay, cool. But I knew I got to keep it with me. And I saw all this material flopping behind me. I didn't know it was a parachute, but I knew I had to pack it like this. I knew I had to stow it like this, and I knew I had to carry it with me and then stash it somewhere. I don't know why, but I knew I had to do it. And I knew I had to be 15 kilometers in that direction. I don't know why, but off I go. Start trotting in the correct direction. Got to my destination. I don't know why I need to be here, but I know I need to be really quiet when I get here. Okay. So I caged myself, I hid myself. And eventually I saw somebody kind of dressed like me. I thought, look, if he's dressed like me, maybe he's a friend of mine. Right. I whispered to him, psst, psst. Comes over to me, and he stows his key, and I've got a bit of a headache, so I kind of elbowed him and said, do I know you? He goes, yeah. Continues with his stowing of his gear, and he goes, and I said to him again, do you know me? And he goes to me, Sparrow, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I just know I need to be here. And so he kind of sat me down and said, relax, I'm going to look after you. So he jumps on the radio, Hilo comes and picks me up. And anyway, long story short, it was about a week before the memory came back. And yeah, I got shipped back home, obviously, very quickly. And yeah, so the memory came back. But I've got this massive gap in my memory bank. I've got no recollection of the incident itself. My reserve ship deployed on its own. Yeah. So that's one of the injuries I had suffered. Yeah, among others, my knees are shot. My spine's.
No one would have knew. You look so healthy.
Oh yeah, look, I'm in constant pain. But the thing is, the problem with complaining is you just piss people off. So I've decided not to and just smile through it. Sometimes you forget you have pain, but every so often it will remind you. Some days I will crawl on the ground crying from the pain. And the person who sees all this is my wife. She is the one who gets to witness all the fallout of all this anecdotes that I get to share with you today.
Yeah. And so mainly it was the health that made you want to, would you say so?
No. That was a great part of it, I have to say, yes. That was, I would say maybe about 60-70% of it. The other thing that kind of sealed the deal for me was the fact that we were fighting in conflicts that I no longer believed in. I'm a thinker, I'm a philosopher, and I'm also a warrior. I just happen to get paid for what I believe is I'm doing right. So in the early days when I was deployed for the first few times, I truly believed in what we were doing. But towards the end of my deployment, and I won't talk about where I go, but towards the end of my deployment, I feel that, it's a profit game now. It's no longer about helping people. It's no longer about assisting our less fortunate brothers and sisters who are doing it tough under the leadership of a dictator. It's no longer about that.
Yeah.
So on top of that, when I started questioning things, I found that the establishment do not like soldiers who question orders. They don't like soldiers who think too much. They do want you to think critically on operational matters, but not political matters. So when I start having this kind of discussion over the mess hall, people take note. I no longer receive the kind of accolade that I would normally get from my superiors. You know, they started to shun me and kind of sideline me. You know, they didn't want me to influence the younger soldiers. And I was getting quite old at the time as well. So, you know, I have a group of guys. I had my own team.
Yep.
And obviously, you know, whatever the team leader talks about, it's what the younger soldiers will contemplate. And that will perpetuate that whole, you know, cycle. So obviously, my uppers didn't appreciate that. And they told me that in so many words as well. But I wasn't going to be cowed by, you know, my superiors. So I kept challenging them, you know, because I didn't understand myself. So I found that they kept pushing me further and further back down the line. And to the point where they decided the only way they're going to shut me up was to give me the best posting in the entire army, to which I was very grateful. but I recognized exactly what it was. It was a severance pay. They were saying, "You've had enough. We need to put you out to pasture now," and that was basically what they did. They sold me out.
And you didn't, so hence you actually didn't leave willingly.
Would I have stayed on if things were different? Yes. Had any one of those factors not been at play, I think I'd probably still be in uniform in one form or another. But given what it is, here I am having a conversation with you.
No, and this really actually is a good segue to the next thing we're talking about, which is a soldier and a warrior. Maybe you'd like to tell me more a little bit about that.
Sure. I used to think they were the one and the same. You know, a soldier's a warrior, warrior's a soldier, right? It ain't. It isn't. Far from it. Soldier is somebody who is paid. It's a profession. You are paid to go to war for a nation. A warrior, on the other hand, is somebody who takes on a cause, be it social, be it environmental. It could be anything. Somebody who has decided to put his life on the line for his community rather than for a paycheck. That is, in a nutshell, the big difference between a soldier and a warrior. So to this day and to the day that I die, I will say that I am a warrior. I walk the warrior's path, but I will never, ever identify myself as a soldier ever again. Not to say that I'm not proud of what I have achieved as a soldier in that time that I was.
And I think there's a lot of narrative that you walk through while you're there, and you had to sort of unlearn. I mean, if you were to, and we talk about questions, right? If you were to give a question to people who are still in the force, so let them sort of think on it, what would that question be? And to just sort of like challenge them on their notion of the narrative they're telling themselves.
As in why they're joining the army?
Well, yeah, I think why being
Why be a soldier?
yeah, being a good what was the most important question really?
I often ask this actually because a lot of people would come to me to seek advice as they're joining the forces, or those who are in the force who wants to go for selection for special forces training. They would come to me to get advice about how to, how to get the foot in. I guess the question I often ask them is, what is it that you choose? What is it that you hope to achieve by playing at that elite level? What is the difference between where you are now and where you choose to be? And the answer often is quite varied. Sometimes it's quite naive. Sometimes it's just I want to be better than myself, and And as far as I'm concerned, your answer is yours. So, I'm not here to judge what your answers are, but I will always give them the best description of my time in the service and what it cost me personally to be playing at that elite level. It comes at a tremendous cost, not just physically, but socially. You have no friends, you have a family, and you don't have a job. You have your unit. We don't go to work. I have not worked a single day in my life, as far as I'm concerned. You cannot make friends with civilians because they will never understand you. You will never relate to women in the way that they deserve to be related to. It makes you a misogynistic, sexist pig, like people that I despise, that I personally buck against. It makes you a racist. It's crazy, but I will put my hand on my heart and say I once behaved like a racist pig. But I like to think that I know better now. Yeah, I mean, it comes at a great cost. It cost me a marriage. It cost me my home. 2 homes, in fact. 2 homes. So I always tell people who come to me asking for those kind of advice or those kind of discussions, are you willing to give up your entire life for this pursuit? Because if you're not, or if you even have an inkling of doubt in your mind that you're not willing to give up all these things, then the answer is no, you don't. You don't need to be here. You don't want to be here.
And tell me about the day when you left the force. How was the day like?
Very bitter. I felt betrayed. I was broken. I was spiritually broken. I was mentally drained. I was emotionally drained. Physically, when you look at me, I was at the peak of my fighting form. I'm really short. I don't know if the camera can pick it up. I'm the smallest guy in my unit, full of alpha characters, big dogs in my units, and I mean big. At my fighting fitness, at my fighting weight, I was 80 kilograms, and that is unheard of for somebody my size. So physically, when you look at me, you think he's at the top of his game. But inside, I was completely broken. I was shattered. There was nothing left in me. I had no steam left in me. I had no more passion left in me. I've just lost my family. So going back to my family, mom and dad, my then wife, it just felt hollow and tasteless, like they were second best. And they don't deserve that. They don't deserve that label. But that's exactly how I saw them. My family was second best. And I told them that. So you will never measure up to the family that I earned for myself. And how arrogant was I to even think that, let alone say it. So it was a very bitter day. I left the service knowing that things will never be the same,
And I don't know if you're willing to share about this, but looking back, what do you? Because you mentioned a little bit about depression, being suicidal, homicidal, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but please just correct me if I'm.
Absolutely.
Yep, and also it causes the loss of your home and your marriage. What do you think attribute to you being in depression? Or what are the few, I don't know, could you say factors, narrative, points, however you want to put it?
A lot of it, it was, we won't mince words. It is exactly what it was. It was post-traumatic stress disorder, combat stress, in other words. There were some very specific incidences that would trigger that. When I think about it, it would send me in a really steep spiral downwards. But at the time, I didn't know this. In fact, I had completely forgotten about this incident. I had buried it in the back of my mind. But at the time when I left the service, a broken man, I didn't know I was broken. I just knew that I was sad. but it was a legitimate sadness because I was leaving something that I've known all, as far as I was concerned, all my life, right? So I thought that's exactly what I was sad about. But this sadness, this depression dragged on for months and months. Now, this is not normal. There's nothing in life was fun anymore. You know, my wife, my ex-wife rather, was a wonderful woman who, she saved my life, in fact, her and her father. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
They couldn't understand. They knew exactly what was wrong with me because. So let's go back. When I was married to this lady, her father was an ex-soldier from my unit. So when I was introduced to him upon meeting her, he welcomed me into the home and accepted me as, you know, the future son-in-law that he knew that I would be. And when you're accepted by somebody like that, it's an amazing honor. You know, he's a war hero. He's a decorated soldier, and he's the highest decorated firefighter in New South Wales at the time. And so one day he came up to me, he puts his hand on my shoulders, and he says, "Rick, you may not want to hear this, but you have what they call post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD." And I looked at it and said, "What? What's this PTSD bullshit?" Never, I haven't heard of it at that point. So I was very cynical, and I said, "This is mumbo jumbo rubbish, right? These are for soft-hearted, tissue-crying liberals, you know, and which I'm not. Apparently, I am." Anyway, so I kind of rejected his assessment. And at the time, all I knew, I was either very, very sad, very depressed, or I was incredibly angry. The kind of rage that I cannot explain, where I would just destroy the entire house. I would throw things. I would throw the television on the ground. Like that kind of rage, for no reason. I couldn't understand it, and I was hypervigilant. And so when he mentioned that, I realized that, okay, maybe there's something not quite right with me. But you know what? No big deal. I get over this, right? I'll get over this. I'm a paratrooper. There's nothing I cannot do, right?
Yes.
That's exactly what else. That's exactly the narrative I had in my mind. I'm a paratrooper. There's nothing I cannot do. The arrogance of me. Wow. And it all came to a head one evening when so my then wife, my ex-wife, and I owned an apartment in Sydney. And we were the youngest owners of the apartment complex, of the apartment in that complex. And my wife was part of the body corporate committee, and she would attend the meetings, and she'd come home crying after every single meeting. And one day I lost my nut. So I found out that she was being bullied by the chairperson, who is he's a bully. He's known as a bully, and I lost my nut. I said, "How fucking dare you? You have no idea who I am." I picked up the hammer with the intention of murdering him in his own house. I got to his door. I kicked his door down, and my wife, my ex-wife, was begging me to. She practically knelt down for me. She said, "Don't cross the threshold, because if you do, there will be no turning back." And then my father-in-law, thank God, bless him, appeared. He was there at the time, visiting with his daughter and me. He appeared behind me. He puts his hand on my shoulder while I was raging with a hammer, about to go full postal on this man. He puts his hand on my shoulders and he says, "Rick, it's okay. I understand." So I look at him in his eyes, and he looks at me. He says again, "I understand. I get it." And that's all he said. And I just broke down crying. I dropped the hammer and I said, what's happening to me? What is happening to me? I said, this rage is not normal. And that's when I said to them, I will accept help. I will go to I get psychological analyze and whatever else. Yeah. And I would actually commit myself into a hospital if I need to. Yeah. So I did for, I thought it would be for about, 6 days, a week, 7, maybe 2 weeks. I ended up being incarcerated, and I was in incarceration.
What do you mean? Like, do you get tied up?
No, it wasn't one of those type of places. But I was locked up at a nut house for almost 6 months. 6 months, yeah. It was some of the hardest things I've ever had to face. But at the same time, it was also the start of my recovery. You know, it gave me a lot of skills to deal with the stress that comes up, that surface. You know, and it's not all doom. Like, you know, we've talked a lot about the doom and gloom of service life, and there's a lot of it. But on the other side of the flip side of the coin, there's a lot of positive that comes out of it. You know, like it's amazing. Like, you know, the life skills I've learned from this nut house saved my life. And believe it or not, it's helped a lot of other people that I've come in contact with throughout the years. One of whom is my best mate, who also was in the army, that served with me. I was able to use some of those skills to help him cope with his stress. So, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. You know.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course. I mean, I think which is why I love this kind of interview, because it's long. You can just talk about anything you want, and I think that's kind of like how life is, right? There's two sides to the coin, and if you just give the person 3 minutes, what can they tell you in 3 minutes? Yeah, well, I'm glad 6 months was over for you, and but it's so long. 6 months is,
Yeah, man.
it's really long.
Yeah. But it was really, I mean, like I say incarceration, it was incarceration, but it was like a country club, to be honest. You know, it was, man, like,
It was a buffet.
it was a buffet, you know, I get to exercise. No, actually, no, I couldn't exercise. It was explained to me that the exercise I was doing compounded the aggression I had within me. So all I wanted to do was throw fists. I wanted to beat things up, you know. If I couldn't do that, I played tennis. But I was smacking the ball with such venom, you know. They banned me from every sport. Like
They should
every
put you
time.
to slacklining.
Well, they didn't know slacklining back
All
then, right? But
Hey, you know
anyway,
what? That would be a great one for. Well, we'll come to that too.
yeah,
You
we
know,
can come
after
to
the
that. We can come to
slacklining.
that.
So would you say that the um the 6 months was the thing that really pulled you out from?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I wouldn't say it pulled me out. It gave me some skills to deal with the uncontrollable rage. There was still a lot of work I had to do myself, and I still believe to this day that the hospital didn't cure me. They dosed me up with so much drugs that I couldn't put one and one together. I was numb the entire time. I was on literally handfuls of psychotics, antipsychotics every single day.
Oh my God.
And it was unpleasant, you know. And the thing that I came to realize was I much rather be in jail or dead than be numb like I was in that entire period of my time there. So yeah, so I took myself off it and I came. Silly thing.
Well, I'm glad that you had to.
I had to, but it was against the doctor's advice. It was very painful. The withdrawal symptoms were horrendous. I was incapacitated for at least a week. I was throwing up. You know, you've seen movies where people are withdrawing from cocaine or any type of hard drugs. You know, they're sweating, they're rolling around, they're screaming. That was me. That was me for 7 solid days, and I was just throwing up all over my bed, and I was a basket case.
Were you then still with wifey, or just alone?
Yep, she was looking after me.
What a woman.
Yeah, she was an amazing human being, you know, and she saw me, you know, through the night terrors, the nightmares I have at night, waking up, punching her, you know, because I thought I was fighting the enemy. Yeah, I mean, like I'm not proud to say it, but I would beat my then wife in her sleep, thinking she was the enemy. It was a horrible, horrible period of my life, period of her life as well. But to her absolute credit, she stuck by me until I was well enough to look after myself before she said, I can't do this anymore. You know, both her and her father, you know, saved my life.
And if you were to sort of like give another person in the same situation as you before some solid advice, and I'm sure you do meet people, what would you tell them to do? What questions or?
Solid advice. Like I said before, it's not my place to give anyone advice. But if somebody asks me what's important in my life, is to find something greater than yourself to fight for.
Right.
Be
No.
it-
How about when you meet that Dan Rick right now, before checking in himself to the clinic, what would you tell him? How about that? Giving your old self advice.
breathe. Just breathe. Just be. Just breathe. Things will turn out well.
Okay. I'm just gonna dig in a little bit more into it. So I think this is fascinating. I think a lot of people will get a lot of this. Do you remember what are some of the narrative you need to rewire or relearn just to adjust yourself back to society?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest one was that people don't owe me shit. The general public don't owe me anything. They didn't ask me to stand up for them. They didn't ask me to dig the hole for them and sit in that hole for 6 weeks waiting for something to happen. They didn't ask me to go hungry all those time. They certainly didn't ask me to sign my life on the dotted line. It was my own decision. That was probably the one that I keep having to remind myself, because I would often, even after coming out of the service, putting my uniform away, I just viewed civilians as waste of breath, waste of DNA, waste of potential. That's how arrogant I was, And sometimes I even catch myself still slipping back into that narrative, and I have to say, hey, dude, we're not going back there again.
No. I have the same narrative, but I think from a very different angle. I was like, wow, I wish I can just tell you the answer right now. I'm going to control myself not to tell you that. I'm going to lead you to it.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the things that kind of keep popping up in relations to military service. At least that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that can pop into my mind in relations to that question.
And you and I are, I'm just going to do a left turn here. You and I are big on solo traveling. And I feel that, traveling means different things to different people. So what have you gotten most out of your solo trips? And when did you start it?
I started shortly after I left service. I started doing volunteer work because I felt I was missing that mission in life. Okay. And so I started doing volunteer work in my community back in New South Wales. And I found that it was very fulfilling. And I kind of just expanded on it. So I decided I would not just help my local community, but I would help the community abroad, people I don't know. So I picked Nepal as a random location. I signed up as one of those voluntourism thing, thinking I was king shit and I was doing great, saving the world. I'm gonna look great on Facebook with all my photos.
And you do it, and you do.
And I did it. Yeah, I had all the photos to prove how great I was when I was in Nepal.
There was a lot of likes.
Yes, lots of likes. My ego was stroked the whole way through. I was feeling very good about myself. Shortly after, but what I learned from that though is traveling is about people. Traveling isn't about a place. What I have learned about all the years I've been traveling is that the place is only as good as the people who make it. So when I say to you, I didn't enjoy a particular place, it's because those people will not allow, perhaps it's the wrong way to say, I have not learned how to connect with those people in that location.
I'm just very humble way of saying.
Yeah. So that's what it comes down to. When I go to a place, doesn't matter what place that is, I always reach out in the best way I know how, which is the very Australian way. G'day, how you doing? I'm Rick, I'm from Australia. Be my friend, let's talk. No? Oh, whoa, shit, sorry, okay, too much? All right, that's cool. Let's try something else. And we talked about immediacy, I practiced it when I was in the Army because when I meet a girl, when I'm still in uniform, I don't know if I'm going to be deployed the next day, the next week, or if I'm going to go to work one day and come back with one less limb. So if I meet a girl or even a guy that I enjoy his company, I say, hey, let's go for a drink the next night. I don't kind of mince around. Likewise, when it comes to traveling, you can practice that immediacy a lot more freely because travelers also understand that the time, the interaction you have with them is very finite. So that when you kind of jump in their face and say, hey, my name's Rick, g'day, how you doing? Be my friend. They're usually like, oh, look, we've got 5 days. Yeah, I can be a friend. I'm sick of you in 5 days. I can piss you off and start afresh, right? But therein lies the beauty. Because when you open yourself so freely and so openly and so unreservedly, magic happens. Magic happens, right?
Oh, I love it.
And this is where my community starts to build itself. And I have collected an amazing community around me, an international family of like-minded kindred spirits.
I love it. Magic. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So good. And also, I just want to go back to the time where I first met you, right? Remember this day, great day in Melbourne. We went out, we did the whole dancing thing in the bar in Chinatown. We went drinking with your friends, and then we did some stuff, and then we met more people, and then we went back home, and you took off your vest and and you have this huge knife behind your back.
Yes.
And this is not, well, this is while you were dancing with girls.
Yes.
So, and will you say that's a knife? I mean, okay, what's a dagger or?
No, it wasn't a dagger. It was my combat knife. I've carried that throughout my entire operational life. So to explain to you why that was and how that transpired was, for almost 13 years, I was never once unarmed. When I was in the service, I was every day carrying a firearm. Every day. Every single day. When I'm not in uniform, I'm carrying a knife on me. So when I left the service, suddenly I no longer have the access to all this fancy new toys. I felt so naked. I know I'm not in any imminent danger. I know there's no IEDs out there. I know I'm not gonna be set upon by a group of thugs with the machetes. However, I couldn't bring myself to step out the door not properly attired. And to me, being properly attired means having my full CES, combat serviceable equipment. And that included a light source, a fire source, a blade of sword. Doesn't matter how large the blade is. In the case where you saw me, when you met me, it happened to be a really large combat knife.
Oh, okay. I caught you on a good day.
Yeah. And some electrical tape. And these are the things that I carry with me all the time. Even now, obviously I don't carry a knife on a plane, but when I travel. But I always have some sort of blade in my, on my possession. Yeah.
So let's talk about. Oh wait, finish your thought.
But now I'm a little bit more. I've got a little bit more finesse. So my martial journey has come a long way since then, and I wouldn't say that I don't carry a knife anymore, but I do carry things that are less overt. I carry a pen, for instance, which can do just as much damage as any blade.
A special pen.
It doesn't have to be a special pen, but my pen is always special.
It's a user.
It's a utility pen, yes.
Okay. And let's dive a little bit about the cargo pens. And we'll have you take it from here. What's with the pens?
What sort of pens?
Yeah, I mean, you always, when I see you, you're always in cargo pants.
Yes,
So,
it's pretty pathetic. I've got zero fashion sense. My clothing pretty much consists of sports shorts, hippie pants, and cargo pants. Pretty much everything.
Has it got to do with any of the hiding?
Pretty much. Well, not so much hiding. I don't cache anything. Everything I carry is perfectly legal. With the exception of the knife, it's absolutely illegal. Trust me, you don't want to carry a knife. Like I say, I carry a blade, but it's a lot more covert now. And I certainly don't brandish it like I would. In fact, I wasn't brandishing it. I just had forgotten that you were there. I completely slipped my mind that I have a random stranger in my house, and I'm carrying a knife on my back.
I think that makes a good story for me.
Yeah, right. But now I carry things like a pen, wherever my pen is.
Let's look at this pen.
I think I've taken it off while we were doing the interview.
What do we have? What special stuff do we have today?
At the moment, I've got nothing much in my pocket other than my wallet, but I've got my little torch here.
Okay.
I would carry a small blade about that long, just for cutting, anything that you need a blade for.
Yeah.
My pen, believe me, the pen gets used all the time, not in the ways that you would imagine. I'll always have a length of rope with me, and amazingly, I use it all the time. Oftentimes, I would also wear what we call a survival bracelet, which I make myself. On that, you'll find a little flint, which I can use to create fire with. And sometimes, if I'm going on extended trips, you'll find that there's also a wire saw weaved into that bracelet. So yeah, like I say, paratroopers were very imaginative. We can make a lot of funky stuff.
Yeah, and I remember when I was going traveling, I come to you for self-defense advice as well. So, well, now there are a lot of my female friends, Asian, small built female, who are planning to do some solo traveling, who are scared of the ass. So, what sort of self-defense advice will you give to our female friends over here?
That's a very good question. So a lot of schools that you go to these days will teach you how to fight. What I teach people now is how not to fight. So if you have to fight, you've already lost. What I teach people is fight psychology, how to disengage, how to identify a dangerous situation, how to assess a battlefield, how to conduct a battlefield assessment, how to disengage from a hostile environment, how to disengage with all the people that you need with you from a hostile environment. So these are the kind of things I teach primarily before we get into the fist throwing, because any monkey can throw a fist. I can teach literally a chimp to throw fists and be very effective at it. But it takes life experience to teach how not to get into a fight.
And if they don't have you as a resource because of geographical location, is there anything like online or courses or things that they can find?
There is,
okay,
but be very cautious about what you learn online, because it's like learning kung fu from a comic book.
That's true.
Okay.
The situation tested.
Yeah, because whilst you may have the step-by-step procedure of what you do in a particular situation, what is missing in that whole package is context and experience. So that instructor, who may be very good at their craft and may be very effective in that particular technique, is showing you that technique. You're not able to ask the questions that needs to be asked. So be very cautious about learning from an internet source. But if you do learn from a person, always speak to people who are from that community. Don't just randomly go to a dojo and expect that you're gonna.
What questions should they be asking?
First of all, talk to people in the community, from within your community, people that you know practice the art. Doesn't matter what art it is. It could be traditional martial arts. But if you want to practice an art that is practical, and that will get you out of trouble with minimal amount of training and application, you got to do Krav Maga, boxing, Krav Maga, or Muay Thai, and a bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, a bit of ground fighting. So these are the what I call the holy trinity. With these three basics of this three code under your belt, you are a really difficult target to take down. But if you become an expert at any one of these three, you stand a far better chance of surviving a hostile encounter.
Okay, one weapon to carry. Pepper spray? Yes, no.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Okay, because pepper spray under duress, you will never read the environment properly. Okay, if I pull up a pepper spray right now, I'm going to get a face full of it, not you. because the wind's coming in this direction,
Oh.
right? Which means I got to fight my way around to you, to the other side of you to use it, all right? So never, ever go pepper spray unless you are law enforcement and you're trained to do so.
So don't even take weapons. Just
no,
really
I didn't
just
say
run.
that. I didn't say that. Yeah, absolutely, run.
Okay.
If you can avoid it, run. There's
Okay.
no loss of pride in running away. Okay. And let me share a little
yes.
anecdote with you, if I may. I'll make it very quick. In my early days of travel, I was in a country, in a developing country, where I was harassed by a drug dealer. I was with a girl, and she was Caucasian, and so this drug dealer decided that he would try and mac onto her, and obviously me being out of service recently, I was full of bravado and ego. I took exception to it, and I told him to F off. And he had his own ego issues, so he came at me, starts chest poking me. And I always walk around either at the time with my knife and a walking stick. And because I was in public, I wasn't going to pull out a knife, so I broke his ribs with a very quick jab into his rib, and I felt it crack. It collapsed, and he ran away. Okay, I thought that's the end of the engagement. I'm feeling pretty good about myself, strut away. A little bit later in the afternoon, I saw this guy again further down, somewhere in the city, and I knew he was waiting for me because he was staring at me, and his whole body posture, his whole body language was aggressive. And then I noticed something that in his hand that was hiding from me, and he was tapping it against his leg like that. And I knew he was. I would never have picked it up had he not been tapping it on his leg. He was nervous. He was tapping it. He was doing this. And then I realized it was shiny. It was a curved, long, shiny blade. It was a kukri. I thought, you've not had enough. I'm going to destroy you. So I pretended I didn't see him. I sauntered close to him, and as soon as I got close enough, I pulled out my own knife, which was the folding knife, and I just went to town on him. I didn't deploy the blade. I just grabbed his knife hand and just started pounding him. And he opened up, and he felt like a ton of shit because he wasn't expecting me to engage him. And out of the corner of my eyes, as I was pounding him, came two of his buddies. I thought, oh, here we go. It's on like Donkey Kong. I kind of broke contact. I pushed him aside. His friends came running, grabs him, grabs the knife, and then runs off into the alleyway. I thought, whoa, that was unusual. That's cool. All right, so I walked away feeling pretty proud of myself. All right. And I never thought about it for another week. The next week, I was in the city, and I was meeting some friends in a foreign city. And as I was walking down the street, I saw a guy, a Caucasian, who was new in town. Because when you're traveling, you kind of notice all the faces very quickly, especially when you've spent several months in that place. And so when I notice a new face, I always make a note of it. And this guy was new. He's been there for at least a few days, but he's new. He's grinning at me, and he's in a big American accent. He says, "I know you." I look at him and said, "No, and you don't know me, buddy. Yeah, no. Asian people, we all look the same, And I just kept walking. I said, "No, I know you. You're the knife guy." And I just went from yellow to white. It's like, "Nah, you're mistaken, man. I don't know what knife guy is." And I walked away. And he was next to him was a local girl who then confirmed what he was saying. He said, yes, I know you. You're the knife man. And I kind of went from white to green, and I felt like throwing up at the time because I thought, shit, I thought I did all this and I was not recognized because I was just blending into the background, right? No, the entire city recognized me. So she said, yes, yes, I know you knife man because you helped my sister. I said, help your sister? Fucking what? And then I recalled a week prior to the knife incident, there was a guy on a motorcycle who ran over a woman with an infant. The mother was badly injured. The baby was very badly injured. And so I was rendering assistance to this mother and baby. And this this random stranger starts chest poking me, and I was yabbering in the local language. I couldn't understand. So I shoved him back and said, "Fuck off, help me, or fuck off," in English. I had no idea if he understood me or not. But he yabbing on about something and then just disappeared into the crowd. I said, that's fine. So I went back to doing my thing. Turns out the guy I face palmed and told the fuck off was the brother of the guy of the guy with the knife, the drug dealer.
It was.
So I'm kind of thinking, oh my God, I'm going to throw up at this stage. I've just opened up a drug dealer. I've insulted his brother. And I'm pretty sure I have pissed off his uncle somewhere along the line. And the entire city is going to come gunning for me.
And they know you.
Everyone knows me. Like random strangers, a white guy who just arrived in the city knows me. How does the local drug dealer not know me? So what does that mean? I'm living the entire time in absolute fear of my life. So why am I sharing this story with you? Goes back to your question. What do you do in a situation when you have to defend yourself? Fucking run away, dude. There's no shame in running away. Just because you can, just because you have the skill sets to eliminate a hostile target, doesn't mean that you should, because the cost is immeasurable. You have no idea how that's going to affect the situation that you're currently in. You have no idea the risk you can put the people you're with at when you decide to engage somebody like that. You know, I have just literally put the girl's life in danger because she's recognized now, myself in danger, and all my party, whoever choose to hang around me, in danger as a target for those bad people. So, moral of the story is, don't do drugs, or don't get into fights with drug dealers,
Or run away. Yeah.
It's a lot of moral of the story there. Sorry, that was a bit longer than I'd expected. But yes.
No, that was a great story, and a good sort of antidote to cement the thought that, you know, even if you have the skill set, maybe the better decision is actually to walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. So it took me a number of lessons to learn, to learn the hard way. I mean, even after that very same fact, I was back in Australia and literally made the exact identical mistake. I mean, I won't go into the specifics, but I had to be the hero. I stood up for somebody who couldn't protect themselves, and it became hostile and physical. And I decided I want to test my skill sets with empty hand, in an empty hand confrontation. And it turned out really bad for me. Yeah.
Okay, let's do a side step and talk about something a bit lighter.
Yes,
41-year-old now, and you've got out the forces when you are 31, which means, if you do the math, you live 10 years a retired life. How are you enjoying it so far?
Fantastic. I'm loving it. Being retired doesn't mean sitting on a beach drinking pina colada and wearing a straw hat all day long and getting a nice tan. Although sometimes you can't do that. It simply means freedom to do what you need to do in life. It simply means giving yourself the permission to do what you are meant to do in life. Be it painting, be it writing poetry, be it helping people. And I found that in the 10 years that I've been retired, the moments that I find I'm most fulfilled is when I'm serving others. It doesn't have to be in grand manners like doing work in Nepal or anything. It could be just helping a friend move home. It could be just talking to a random stranger who was crying on a bench. Serving the community is what drives me, and that's what I'm most passionate about. And so everything that I do in life now is to make sure that I live that truth, because it makes me happy.
How did you find out about that?
Purely accidental.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Obviously, when I was in Nepal working in the orphanage, I had a great time. I didn't realize I was having a great time because I was serving. I just realized I was having a great time. I thought because I was traveling, I was in a different place, someplace exotic, and people were patting me on the back, and I was getting lots of likes on my Facebook page. My ego thing again. But there seems to be a trend in all these little things that I did. You know, the things that made me most happiest was, as I say, when I was serving other people.
And I would just want to dig into a little bit more about being retired. How much money do you allocate for yourself on a monthly basis these days? How much do you think before, and how much do you actually spend?
That's a very good question. I'll put it simply this way. I'm fortunate enough to not have to think about what I spend. I can very comfortably, swipe my credit card and know that I will be able to pay that debt when the bill comes. So I don't think about how I spend and what I spend. Because at the end of the day, money ain't real. It's ones and zeros on a computer that, one day will just go blank anyway. So enjoy life, spend within the means, within your own personal means, obviously. Don't go nuts and get a, $30,000 credit card debt. That's not what I'm saying. But certainly don't hoard money, and don't think of money as the end. It's a vehicle for you to realize your dream. That's it. But I'm a man of simple means. I don't need big things. I mean, look at how I dress.
Yeah.
No,
so even when you're here in Singapore, you're still crashing at a friend's place.
At a friend's place. I still stay at hostels. I still sometimes occasionally stay in dorms at 41. It's because I choose to do that, not because I can't afford anything else.
Yeah. And would you say that if you were to be, if you're being budgeted, right? How much would you budget for yourself a year to live like how you're living right now?
I haven't done a budget in over.
I mean, just a roundabout figure, like a month, right? How much would you think?
Let me have a good think, because that's a question I never thought about.
No, I just want to underscore to people. Maybe it's
as in
what is the reality?
Personal spending, you mean?
Yeah.
Like not talking about rent or anything like that, right?
No.
Okay. Well, I haven't paid rent in over 20 years, so that's kind of handy. I would say I spend probably around, personally, about $4,000 a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's not terribly much.
No. Okay, moving to slacklining a little bit. I think this is one of those hobbies that you took up during this free time that you have now, and you casually told me that you'll be one of the first in Australia to be charging money to teach slacklining.
Australia, in Victoria at least.
In Victoria.
Mm-hmm. In Melbourne, yeah.
Yeah. How did you do that? Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Purely accidental, I think. I've been slacklining for a number of years now, and it started when I was traveling as well. I saw someone did it out in the park. In fact, I saw it in Malaysia, Malacca, and I thought, how cool is that? That is the duck's nuts. I bet you I can do it. And when I set my mind to something, I'm like a dog with a bone. I just don't let go until I got it. So and I'm an expert at becoming an expert, so I kind of picked it up real quickly, and it became a passion. It was fun, and not just because it was fun, but because it was a tool I used for meditation, So I draw a lot of parallels when I meditate to when I slackline, because when you're not centered and when you're not thinking about your body posture, there is no slacklining. You cannot slackline if you're not centered. So anyway, I've been doing it for a while, and I was quite good at it, and I was one of a few people who practice consistently daily, and so I get a lot of exposure, and people would often approach me, and I would teach them what I know. Mm-hmm. And so one day a mom came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm so and so's mom. You've been teaching my son for the last hour, and I've been watching you, and you're amazing. Are you a teacher? Where's your school at?" I said, "No, I don't, but thank you." And they kind of planted the seed. And she said, "Well, if you're not a teacher of slacklining, you should be, because this is fantastic." And that planted the seed. And whilst I didn't really do anything with it, again, a long story short, through a friend of a friend, a teacher from a high school came to me and said, I heard that you teach slacklining. What do you charge? I said, I don't. But since you want to pay me, let me draft something up. So I kind of made it very nominal. I gave him, I sent him the proposal. He accepted it straight away. And therein begins my first paid gig as an instructor. And it turned out that his students were from the most difficult schools in the region. So they were bad kids. And the first thing the teacher said to me is, please don't be surprised if the kids do not respect you, and they will be really difficult. I said, no worries, it's nothing I can't handle. So they came, and having a military background really kind of captures their imagination, especially when you tell them you've had combat experience, and I would often share anecdotes with them, the funny stuff, not about war service, but the funny stuff that we get up to in the Army. They eat the stuff out, And when you've got their attention, especially when you've got the alpha student's attention, the rest will just fall in the line behind him. So all you got to do is win his trust. The rest is smooth sailing. It is, and that parallel can be drawn for pretty much anything in life. You walk into a social environment, you feel a bit intimidated. Pick the alpha out of the group, make friends with him, and suddenly you'll notice everyone wants to make friends with you. That's just the way it works. It's pack mentality. And so anyway, long story short, word's gotten out, and so one school heard about it, the other school heard about it, and suddenly, I've had a lot of other offers for work like that. So I became one of the first few people who are actually paid financial gains for teaching slacklining in Victoria.
Yeah, and how does the boys receiving slacklining?
The first session will always be difficult because the kids that sent to me are always from the most difficult classes. That's why they have these extracurricular classes, right? But I like to think that I'm pretty good at kind of pulling men into line, and most of them are boys. I very rarely get girls in my classes. Sometimes, but rarely. And what I've learned is 99% of the time, all they want is to be heard. All they want is to be acknowledged. As soon as you give them what they need, what they want from you, there's nothing they will not do for you. And so my job, as soon as I get them, is assess what it is they want from me, And it's a bit of give and take. Sometimes they will try and push the boundaries of my patience, and I'll have to very quickly pull up my my army hat and say, "Hey, boys, you can get away with a lot, but do not disrespect me, because I will fuck you up 10 shades of blue." But not in those words. But I do sometimes have to pull them up very forcefully, because there's a lot of safety issues at hand. If you don't pay attention, not only are you risking your own safety, but you're also risking the safety of your peers, in which case you're risking my safety and my reputation as well.
And it's your responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just gonna do a quick segue to one of the last question before jumping to the rapid fire question. So you're 41, and when you came in, you have a comment that you don't look like. So what are your routines for keeping yourself physically fit?
I don't so much have a routine for physical fitness, but I practice my art daily, pretty much 7 days a week. Beyond that, not really. I used to run 5Ks a day, but I realized I can't really maintain that because my knees are shot, my back's kind of busted, so it's causing me a lot of pain. So I dial all that back. So now I'm practicing more for my cardio fitness than the actual vigors of combat, for vigors of combat environments. So that's basically it. That's my martial arts and some stretching.
Gotcha. All right, so quick round of questions. What is the books that you have given the most?
Shantaram.
Oh, okay, it's on the list. It's on the list. Would you want to do a bit of explanation on sell the people?
Absolutely. Okay. For those who haven't read Shantaram, please do yourself the favor and do. If you're a traveler and you haven't met Shantaram, shame on you. It's a book about. It's not exactly a biography. It is a work of fiction based on a person's real life experience. And this person is a Melburnian who was a convict, who did some bad things, landed himself in jail, and through his escape to India, after escaping jail, his life's transformation from criminal to what he ended up becoming by the people he met. And so a lot of his stories kind of resonated with me through my own travels. And whilst I don't exactly see myself in him, I see a lot of parallels in our stories.
Gotcha.
And are there any favorite documentaries or movie that you like to?
I love Mr. Attenborough.
What's that?
Mr. Attenborough. Yes, any Attenborough's documentaries resonate with me.
How do I spell his name?
Edinburgh, that's a good question. A-T-T...
Okay,
Google that one. I don't.
Well, what are the famous work if you want to point someone to whoever's?
I think it's one of his most famous one is called Earth or Life. Yeah, it's just a very beautiful narrator. I love all his documentaries.
What have you purchased under $100 that has most impacted your life?
Let me think. Most impacted my life. My pen I carry with me every single day. And it's very useful.
And can I find it on Amazon?
You certainly can.
How do I
Yep.
search for that?
So my pen is called a hardware. What is it called?
Is that the brand?
No, it's called Hardcore. It's a hardcore pen. Yeah. Yes, you can Amazon it. You can eBay it. It's an Australian company based in Melbourne, which is why I bought it in the first place.
Okay.
But yes, it's a utility pen. Very heavy, writes beautifully.
Okay, we'll just leave it as that. Those who want to do more research could type in. What are some of the worst advice you see or hear being dispensed in your world?
Okay. Well, I hear a lot of bad advice coming from the martial arts world. It's just full of it. I'm not saying I give the best advice, but I certainly see a lot of bad advice coming from that part of the world, particularly in relations to traditional martial arts. Some of the worst one I see, I hate to say it, is from the Silat community. There's a lot of mysticism associated with. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and I'm not saying that I foobar it, but there's just too much hocus pocus with trying to boil water with your power from your palm, that kind of stuff. It's
So what advice would it be? If you focus on the water enough, the water will boil?
yeah. Well, I guess that's what they're trying to sell. If you learn from their school, this is what you can do. I don't know, but I guess my advice is do your research, talk to people from the community. If you want to learn that art, if it's painting, whatever it is, talk to the painters who are in the community. Don't just kind of go head first into whatever you want to learn and think it's going to be the duck's nuts and it's going to be the best.
But and if you are actually in it, start asking questions.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Always challenge your teacher. The second your teacher fubars you for challenging him or her, he's no longer your teacher.
When you think of the word successful, who came into your mind and why?
My mom. My mom is very successful. She's uneducated, comes from a poor, but lives in a shed with 8 siblings, with a father who abandoned them from a very early age, raised by a grandmother who knew nothing but curse words and rubber plantations. She's grown up from that to raising 3 amazing kids, me being one of them, in a foreign country where she barely spoke the language when she got there. She scraped every cent together. Never felt hungry in my childhood. Never. We were dirt poor, and I didn't even know we were dirt poor. And so, but my education was always looked after. She went without all the time, and now when you think of people who are successful, I picture my mom.
Any advice for your 20-year-old self and 30-year-old self and places where we're at?
Advice for my 20-year-old self. Yeah. take a breath, man. Don't let the ego talk so much. It's okay because it will make you who you are. It will shape you to who you will become, but don't let it drive too much. Don't let it drive too much. Just sometimes. 30-year-old self.
Wait, so what were you doing when you're 20?
I was full of ego and I was throwing fists all the time. I was an angry little man. I was proving myself. I was trying to prove myself to the world, to my unit, to my brothers. I was constantly fighting. Yeah.
All right, 30.
So in my 30s, I would say, breathe, just breathe and be calm. Everything will work itself out, and it has, and it's still working itself out.
The most common misconception about you or your work?
People think I shoot a lot of people, or I get shot at all the time. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes I have to say that. I mean, it's not like in the armies. Trust me, it's nothing like. It's 99% absolute brain numbing boredom, with about 1% of absolute chaotic pandemonium, fear-induced vomiting acts of violence.
Are there any asks or requests for the audience to food for thought, or anything you'd like them to do, a book you'd like them to read, places to be, or?
Travel, get out there, see the world. Don't go to the internet and think you can learn everything from the internet. You can learn a lot from the internet, yes, but it's like I said before, it's like trying to learn martial arts from a comic book. You will never be able to feel it until you own it yourself. It's like trying to go to a mosque or a temple and saying, I'm like the Buddha, I'm practically the Buddha. Because if you haven't walked the path, you haven't experienced the journey, it ain't yours. It ain't yours. So traveling is that journey. Traveling is what puts you on the path.
And just to add another layer on top of that, I always tell people traveling versus going on holiday is when you're going on holiday, you know where you're going, but you don't know where you are. And when you go traveling, you don't know where you're going, but you know exactly where you are. Yes. Where can people find you or your projects on the interwebs? So
Well, if people like to find out about what we do, you'll find me at www.casd-australia.org. That's our website. That's where our foundation is found. We are based in 5 different countries, and I'm one of 3 directors in Australia. Correction, I'm one of 4 directors in Australia.
We're done.
All right. Thank you.
Great interview.
Thanks, man.